Hey, hi, hello, and welcome. I'm Court. This is Reading with Court, and welcome to a vlog. So, as you might know, I am participating in the hardest reading challenge you will ever do. And one of those prompts is to do a 24-hour readathon. So, today, that is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to take you along on the journey with me. So we're gonna kind of jump right into reading. It's 8:22 a.m. and I'm gonna do the best I can to read nonstop until I go to bed tonight. But for my first book, we're gonna jump right in. I am going to be reading Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. So this is me. Misha knows that chasing success in Hollywood can be hell. But finally, after years of trying to make it, his big moment is here, an Oscar nomination. And the executives at the studio for his long-running streaming series know just the thing to kick his career to the next level, kill off the gay characters for the algorithm in the upcoming season finale. He refuses, but soon realizes that he's just put a target on his back. And what's worse, monsters from his horror movie days are stalking him and his friends through the hills above Los Angeles. Haunted by his past, Misha must risk his entire future before the silver screen horrors find a way to bury him for good. So I'm very excited to read this. This will cover for prompts. This will be obviously the 24-hour readathon. And this is also one of Q's recommendations for me to read and clear off that list. So I'm going to dive in and I will be back when I have updates. I don't know if it'll be 25%, 30%, 50%, operating on vibes today. So I'll see you in a bit. So I am 28% into Bury Your Gaze. It's been about an hour of reading and I'm intrigued. I am still kind of like a baby in the horror genre, not in the sense of I'm afraid of it, but in that I don't have a whole lot of exposure. I think I've only read maybe one horror, and it was a Nat Cassidy. But I'm definitely invested in what's happening here. I'm invested in like the real world implications of Misha and the story he's trying to tell, and how the like powers that be are trying to stop him from telling that story and trying to make him tell the story that's been told over and over again, as in Kill Your Gaze. We know it's a thing. Any show you watch, the gay characters were either magically straight or dead. There was no in between. So it's interesting seeing that from the studio side and how they write about it happening and all that. But then you're adding in the really cool horror aspects. You learn about a bunch of the projects that Misha has created and worked on and what that means. Not like what it means, but you're meeting the characters from his films and how they came to be and what they are like in this reality as they come to life, so to speak. I'm having a really good time. I think I might go read in my bed instead of being at my desk. Because realistically, if we're going to be reading all day, I don't want to be in this chair all day. This is a good time so far, and I'm going to just kind of keep going and vibe, and I will be back with updates because, that's the point of vlogging. I'm invested, attached to the characters, all of them, like Misha, Tara, Zeke. Those are the three big ones that we've really engaged with, and I'm invested in all of their stories and seeing where we go from here. So I'll be back with an update. I deeply apologize. You do not get a new location for filming because the second I moved to my bed, I read about 3 chapters and then fell asleep for an hour. So it is currently noon and I am at 50% in Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. I'm still having a really good time. I'm liking the look into his past and seeing how he dealt with his own gay identity growing up in Montana and seeing what that looked like in different flashbacks. We just had a really powerful one from 2001 that made me need to pause for a minute and just sit with my thoughts. It was powerful, to say the least. And then you get more creatures. They're starting to figure out like theories, and it's kind of cool watching the characters theorize in the same way that like, we theorize when we're reading, and they're living it and it's real. And I don't know, I'm having a really good time. Obviously I'm gonna finish it, but I'm gonna jump back in. I have a feeling things are about to pick up and zoom. I mean, they've been going pretty decently paced, which it's crazy that this has only been 150 pages so far, but I feel like so much has happened. But I think things are about to go buck wild, so I probably won't be back until I finish. But I'll let you know how I feel when this is over. Hi. I have finished Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. The last 50% was absolutely insane in the best way. It was just a really intense commentary on Hollywood and capitalism, and honestly, as I was reading it, this might be a really niche take. This felt like a story that would be a Dimension 20 campaign on Dropout, DM'd by Brennan Lee Mulligan. But I love that. Everything about this held my attention. I was glued in, locked in, except for that hour nap in the middle, but that was location, not book. And this, I loved it. I loved hearing Misha's story from beginning to end. The flashbacks were an amazing insight into his character to figure out where we were and where we were going. And overall, I had a really good time. And I am looking forward to reading more books by Chuck Tingle. I also liked the little Easter egg for his own work in here, because at one point, it's not really a spoiler, it's just kind of a small thing, but he talks about a documentary about the horrors that happened at Camp Damascus, which I chuckled out loud at that, because I haven't read it, obviously, because this was my first Chuck Tingle, but it was funny to hear him reference his own work, and now I'm kind of putting that on my radar to complete the universe, so to speak. I don't know. But overall, this was a very good time. I think I'm going 5 stars. I wasn't 100% sure when I started filming, because I'm also kind of redoing my rating system to make it more like components based. But I think for this one, I'm going to go 5 stars. So that is book 1 for the 24-hour readathon complete. And next, I had these big plans to just go through my Libby and clear everything that I have on loan right now. But then I was talking to Brittany at Brittany Loves Reading on Sprints, and she started talking about the Lunar Chronicles series and how she's going to be reading the 3rd one. And I've been wanting to do a reread, and I am going to now be reading Cinder by Marissa Meyer, which is the first book in the Lunar Chronicles series. This is a young adult dystopian science fiction. It is obviously a Cinderella retelling, and I'm looking forward to getting into this world. And I have plenty of points to be able to validly use a reread for this challenge. So, Cinder is going to be the next book for this 24-hour readathon. Okay, so let's talk about it. Do you ever have a series that you're like, you know you liked it and you were like, oh, this was such a good time, I'll have to go back to it someday, but you're nervous it like won't live up to the hype? You know what I'm talking about? That is absolutely not what's happening here. So I am like 100 pages into Cinder. I read 100 pages in an hour, which, I mean, I'm a fast reader. I will happily admit that. But like, every time I kept going and I was like, oh, let me stop and update, I was like, no, must keep going. And the only reason I stopped is the sprints I was on took a chatty break. So it's the only reason I put it down. Cinder is a Cinderella retelling taking place in a dystopian future where there is the Earthen Union, which like, Asia is now the Eastern Commonwealth, and a whole bunch of other things that you learn more about throughout the series. But the moon is its own country, which is Earth's rival in a lot of ways, and the main antagonist, so to speak, is a spinoff of the evil queen from Snow White. Her name is Lavanna, and she is trying to convince the prince in this book to marry her and make a royal alliance which he wants absolutely nothing to do with because he's like 19, just got in power where he is in New Beijing, and it's a whole thing. Like, we just got to that part where that started being discussed. But the beginning part, there's a lot of world building and a lot of learning about Cinder, who is our main character. Now, Cinder is a cyborg, as you can tell by the little robo bits on her leg. And she is a cyborg, and you learn that a decent chunk of her body is non-human. She was in essentially what is a car accident, and it caused her to need major surgeries. And it's a really nice commentary on how the world looks at people who are different. Because cyborgs, or if you have like a certain amount of your body that is cyborg, you're not viewed as human. You're viewed as other. You're viewed as property to be owned. And that is what Cinder deals with her stepmother, who has no interest in being her stepmother and is just her guardian. Makes her, in a classic Cinderella fashion, do chores, do all the repairs on their electronics, because Cinder is also a fantastic mechanic and has been forced to do most of the maintenance on her own body. We just reached a really pivotal point in Cinder's story as well, which I don't want to go too much into because it's kind of a major spoiler. But basically, the tides are turning, and I have, well, not all of this left, because a good chunk of the back here is a preview for the next book and also like a whole bonus story. But I've got about a little less than 300 pages left to read, and I'm looking forward to every single one. So I'm going to come back at like the 250 page mark, and I will give you another update. Let's talk a little more about Cinder. So I'm at the 60% mark, which is page 231, and I'm about to start chapter 25. All the different mechanics happening in this book, no pun intended, because Cinder is a mechanic, but all the different storylines weaving together in this are absolutely phenomenal. Like, you have Cinder's story, you have Kai's story, you have the Queen's story, you have the Doctor's story, the androids have their own whole thing going. You've got Cinder's family and the part that they're still playing despite her not fully being with them or wanting to let them in. But this just... Sometimes you read a book from, a while ago, in this case 2012, and it doesn't age well. It becomes super problematic and issues here, there, and everywhere. This is not a case of that. This is a book that I feel holds up completely. Everything about this book has held me in, brought me right back to when I read it the first time. And it's also interesting for this particular series to go back in as a reread, because there's so many things that you learn throughout the series, obviously, because it's a 4-book series with a book in the middle about the antagonist. But there's so many things that I know already because I've read this series 2, 3, 4 times. And every time I go back and reread, I've learned something. I've found another hint that they dropped. The seeds that have been planted throughout this book are so interesting and so subtle if you don't know what you're looking for. If you don't know what's coming, you're not going to completely figure it out. But when they do the reveals, you're going to be like, oh, that makes sense. But I'm obsessed still. I will be probably making this series my entire personality for a bit. I'm going to go back and finish the book, and I'll see you when I see you. Hello, you are getting a phone clip because I am currently hosting sprints and can't use my webcam. But it also gives you, I guess, a different angle. So it is 6:18, and I have finished Cinder by Marissa Meyer. Before I go into too much detail, this was still 5 stars upon reread. So I really like where the story goes in the end of this book, because it's kind of drop after drop and twist after twist, and you don't... I've read it before, but if you're new to it, I feel like you don't really know what's coming completely. And they do a really good job at dropping little breadcrumbs of where we're going next. I'm really excited to keep going, and I'm excited to relive the journeys of these characters and see where we're at and see if they still continue to hold up the way that this one has held up. but I'm going to recommend this book to anyone and everyone from the rooftops. I'm going to scream about it. If you haven't read it yet, you should go read it now. It's older, so it should be easy to get a hold of. Cinder is a wonderful main character. She has a really big heart, and you can tell that she is genuinely good, and you see what the world is throwing at her throughout this book, and you really empathize with her and you feel for her journey. And I don't know, I love these books, and I'm going to possibly pick up the sequel right now. I haven't decided. You guys will know in my next clip what I pick, but a bit of what to expect. I have two ideas. I'm either going to keep going down the path I'm going on and just jump right into Scarlet, because the sooner I read Scarlet, the sooner I get to Cress, which is my favorite in the series. So that's an option. But I also have an arc for Roll for Romance, which was released in July. But I have the arc, so I'm going to try to read that and at least put something towards my NetGalley score, because I have several arcs approved and 0 reviewed for. So I think it might be good for me to start actually reading those. I'm going to decide in the next couple minutes and start reading book 3 of the 24-hour vlog. Or, well, 24-hour readathon challenge thing. Hooray! Hello, I am back again. Still sprinting, so more phone clips. I don't know if they're better or worse on my phone, but here we are. So I ended up choosing, I mean, you can't see by me holding up my Kindle, it's on an ad, but I ended up going with Roll for Romance by Lenora Woods, I think. Let me look this up real quick because I cannot remember her last name. Yes. Okay, Lenora Woods. So for this, I posted in one of my Discord servers. I was like, quick, no context, red circle or dice. And one person chose dice, and so I'm reading Roll for Romance. So Roll for Romance is a D&D based romance. It's about, the main character is a girl named Sadie, who used to be a New York marketing person. You don't really learn her, well, we haven't yet at least learned what her like official job title or whatever was. We just know that she was in marketing in New York City, and she got laid off, and she ends up going to Texas for the summer to stay with her best friend since middle school named Liam. And Liam is a dungeon master for his friends and family. Not family, nope, that was on autopilot. He's a dungeon master for, I don't know if he's done it before or if he was just a player, but he is DMing a campaign of first-time players, which includes Sadie. There's Jules and Morgan, who, I don't remember how they know Morgan, but Jules works with Liam. They're both teachers. And then there's Noah, who is a local bartender who is very interested in the World of Warcraft type game that exists in this world. So they are running their campaign, and the story is really cool in the sense that the campaign is actually part of the story. There is a really good chunk of it where like they'll all sit down to the session and you'll have like the banter and greeting and all that, and then it dives into the character's point of view. So you focus on not only Sadie's story and the love story that's brewing there between her and Noah, but you're also getting like the fantasy D&D campaign as well of Jaylee, Lauren, Kane, and Morgana. And it's really funny to read humans and then you read the fantasy creatures and seeing them like compile with each other. For example, Julie or Jules is like this tiny little middle school orchestra teacher, and her character is Kane, who is a giant purple tiefling barbarian. And it's funny to see the juxtaposition. And there's even little breaks in the session part of the story where they'll be talking at the table, and it was just really cool as someone who has played D&D and loves D&D and really wants to play it more. It was just so fun to read that. At one point, the party is at a wedding, and one of the characters is officiating the wedding in her undercover role. And it has her referencing The Princess Bride because she does the whole marriage part. And then it does a line break and it shows Liam, the DM, yelling at her and telling her to take it seriously. And then it jumps back into her doing what she was required to do. But it was really fun to get to this point and see a group of new D&D players, which is how I identify technically, because I've only done one full campaign and we didn't even finish it because people fell out of touch and all that. But it's just a really good time, and I'm really grateful that I got this as an arc. I mean, I know it's technically been out for a month and a half, but I got approved for the arc 2 days after it was released. So I am reading it in arc form and having a blast. I'm gonna go read more, and I'll be back at around probably like 60-65%. Hello again. I am 73% into Roll for Romance, and I'm still enjoying it, don't get me wrong, but there was a part at about the 50% mark that made me pause and cringe pretty bad. So obviously the story is a Dungeons and Dragons story. Like, Dungeons and Dragons bleeds into their everyday life. It's kind of the whole vibe, which is totally fine. I think it's cute that she's at job interviews and in her head saying what checks she would do. It was like charisma check, dexterity check, all the skill checks, ability checks, all those things. Where it lost me a little bit was around the 50% mark when she couldn't sleep and Noah, the love interest, suggests that they roleplay as their characters, which I'm sure that's a thing that happens, but it's weird. So I've had no problem with the fact that, like, parts of the story are written as the campaign, but it's written like a continuation of the story, like a multi-POV type thing. I think what got me about the role-playing part was it was literally written and formatted as text messages, and it was just weird, and I kept waiting for it to get inappropriate and weirder, and I think that was probably more of my issue, is that I was like, it's gonna take a turn. It's gonna take a turn, because we've been burning slow, and we're at the 50% mark in a romance novel. Something's gotta be coming. So I think that was more my issue. It was like the formatting and me anxiously thinking about what I thought was happening. But since then, that only happened once, thank God, and the rest of the story has been very interesting. We're at 73%, obviously, so we're entering third act territory, and I am preparing myself for what is going to come. I don't know how it is going to be addressed in this particular story, because we are in the third act conflict zone, and our main couple is really just figuring things out. I'm just curious to see, like, what's going to happen here. Where are we going? Like, she just had an interview for a new job, and she was so stressed about it that she ran until her body hurt. And there's just a lot happening in both of our characters. And you see it more from Sadie's point of view, because we actually get her point of view. This is a single POV novel. But it's just interesting to see the inner workings of her mind in all things. And you can totally tell that she has an anxiety disorder, whether it's diagnosed or not. And that's also really cool to be able to see. But I'm ready to finish this book, not because I want it to be over with, but because I want to see how it ends. I want to see where our character's journey is going and what we are doing for the last 27%. I'm gonna go finish this, and I will be back when I'm done. Hello, I have finished Roll for Romance by Lenora Woods. I had such a good time reading this book. I did give it a 3.5 star rating, which doesn't mean it's bad or that I didn't like it. It's just there were certain things in the story that I think could have been done a little bit differently. And there were certain things I wanted more of that I wasn't getting. But I really did have such a good time, and I loved that there wasn't a third act conflict. There was just a third act. Story kept going. And I liked the ending and how it wrapped up, and this is technically a standalone. I say technically because all the time I feel like authors announce that there's actually more books coming, but this one is, in fact, the only one in the series. And it came out in July, so I was able to use it for the new releases prompt of hrcyed. But I want to real quick tell you guys all of the prompts that I filled during this 24-hour readathon. So I read 3 books from 8 o'clock this morning till about 11:45 tonight. And the first book I read was Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. And that counted for the 24-hour readathon, obviously, and Q's recommendations. After that, I read Cinder by Marissa Meyer, and that counted for the 24-hour readathon, as well as disability representation, because while technically, yes, the cyborg thing is a disability in their world, I was more focused on the fact that she is an amputee. So this book did cover that heavily. It's mentioned throughout the story and is a kind of critical point in her character. And then finally, I read Roll for Romance, which I used for the 24-hour readathon, and also a new July release read within 60 days. So that is our readathon, and that is my first prompt from the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do, officially knocked off and completed, which to me is super exciting because I feel like I've been reading for this challenge a lot, but I haven't finished anything. So I have my first little green square and I'm really proud of myself. So if you've made it this far, first of all, thank you. And you can either leave a comment down below, or if you don't feel like chatting, leave a clock emoji to represent like 24 hours. And I'm going to try to do more vlogs like this where I just read for 24 hours without the hrcyed of it all, because it's kind of the quickest way to get stuff read, because I literally read 3 books in a day when it's been taking me weeks on weeks to read 1 book at a time. So I hope you're having a great whatever you're doing, and I'll see you around. Happy time zone.